era for Nintendo GameCube was all about refinement and new creativity. Every game that was on the N64 that transitioned to the GameCube had new games that refined what made them great and new creativity towards them. And with that, we have the most interesting 3D Mario game, we have the most interesting Mario Kart game, we have those Mario Sports games with those charming cutscenes. We've also had a return to the Metroid series with the Metroid Prime games. And let's not forget about the timeless classic Zelda Wind Waker. But out of all the games that were from the N64 to the Nintendo GameCube, arguably the game that had the biggest upgrade between then was Paper Mario. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door has been praised to no end. Considered one of the greatest RPGs Nintendo has ever made, and one of the best Mario RPGs of all time. I first saw this game during a booth at Circuit City. I haven't heard that name in a while. When I first got this game, I was really confused on it because I've never played an RPG around that time before. So I was just wondering, why isn't Mario just jumping on him? Why am I have to wait till him to hurt me? Why can't I just jump? Anyway, so years later, I pick up the game again, and I really thought it was really good. My old copy still works to this very day, so f*** you eBay, you can't get me, you scalpers. So around this time, Mario and RPGs have been doing really good. We had 3 great RPGs around this time, and we have a new Mario RPG series, which is the Mario & Luigi games. And during the 2000s, this is when the Mario RPG series were at its peak. Especially for games like The Thousand Year Door and Bowser's Inside Story. But for now, we're going to be talking about The Thousand Year Door. So let's get started. So the game starts off with a narrator telling you about the story about the Thousand Year Door, where there was this great civilization that unfortunately sank down in the ruins after a massive disaster. Years later, in the present day, Princess Peach finds herself in Rogueport with a hooded woman that gives her a mysterious map. She then sends the map to Mario to see if he can find the treasure. Once he receives the map, he then sends off to Rogueport to help Peach find the treasure. However, once he arrives at Rogueport, he immediately finds himself in trouble with this general named Lord Crumb. He's pretty much after this mysterious female Goomba named Goombella who knows something about the crystal stars. Mario was able to help, but then he was ambushed by his soldiers. But luckily they were able to get away easily. Goombella then shows Mario to Professor Franklin, who knows something about the ancient map he has. He then sends Mario and Co to the sewers, and then they find a mysterious temple where the map suddenly interacts with the pedestal. And this is really no ordinary map because this is a magical map that shows the way of the crystal stars. And with all 7 crystal stars, Mario is able to open the Thousand Year Door. Meanwhile, Princess Peach has been kidnapped by this secret civilization called the X-Nauts. And once Bowser heard the news that Peach got kidnapped by someone that's not him, he then goes out to find Peach to kidnap her. And that's all I'm going to be saying about these 2 characters specifically because I'm going to be talking about them in a different section. And while I talked about the story, it seems a bit brief, but in Paper Mario, it follows the N64 route where every chapter in this game tells its own story. In Chapter 1, it starts off like the N64 game where Mario goes to a grassy plains and meets to a Koopa town. He then finds himself in the sewers finding keys for the castle in the distance. Once he travels back to the place, this Koopa kid named Koops tries to ask him if he can come with him. Years ago, his father went up to the castle to slay the dragon. Unfortunately, he never returned, so he wants to see if his father is still alive. Mario agrees, and so they travel to the castle. Unfortunately, a few rooms later, they find his father's remains. Although, spoiler alert, it's not really his father. Eventually, they climb all the way up to the castle where they meet a giant dragon! So Mario was able to meet up with Hooktail, the dragon from the castle, where he was able to defeat him, and with Hooktail's last breath, he spits out both Koops' father and the crystal star, ending this first chapter in a happy note. And for the second chapter, Mario goes to a giant tree where he helps out with these little creatures defending their home. This chapter also introduced to the secondary antagonists, the Shadow Sirens. They seem like simple hooligans at first, but they become really dangerous throughout the game. But I'll talk about that later. So yeah, it's pretty much as simple as that. You go through a chapter and it tells a different story. With that out of the way, let's go off with the characters. So there's a lot of characters that are in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. The towns and citizens have the usual Toads, Goombas, and Koopas, but they all have their unique spin towards them. This is similar to Paper Mario 64, where there are unique Goombas and Koopas with some unique Toads, but they went all out in this game. They even created unique species in this game, like these dog-like creatures and crows. And as for the main cast, we have completely new partners. In the first Paper Mario game, Mario meets a Goomba town with Goombario, who is a kid who knows about pretty much everything for some reason. But in the Thousand Year Door, we have Goombella, who is a researcher for Professor Frankly, and since she carries around a book, she knows about various enemies. Koops is a Koopa kid who is a lot more shy compared to something like Koopers. Flurry is a retired actress who lives in Boggly Woods with these little puny creatures. In Chapter 3, you'll meet this little Yoshi kid that you can name him yourself, and he has a bit of an attitude compared to other Yoshis. Though the most popular partner in this game was probably Vivian. Vivian is a shadow siren who works with her other sisters. Unfortunately, she's pretty much the punching bag of the group. But later on in Chapter 4, when Mario got his name and identity stolen, Vivian decides to help without knowing it was Mario. And so when she realized it, she helps him anyway, because he was the only one that was nice to her. Admiral Bombray is probably one of my favorite characters in terms of story. He was once a sailor who loves to sail out to the seas, but one day once his wife passed away, he refused to sail again because he blames himself over grief. Later on, Mario gives him a letter that's from his late wife, who encourages him to not give up what he loves in life. And honestly, I really like the whole story. It's very cute and charming, and a bit sad. Anyway, so we have about 3 villains in this game. So one of the main characters you'll meet in this game is Lord Crump, who is the general of the Xnauts. He is mostly a goofy villain who tries to get the crystal stars, but Mario's always one step ahead of him. My favorite moment of him is that in Chapter 5, he's in disguise as one of the pirates. And to really emphasize it, he then breaks the 4th wall, telling the player that he is Lord Crump. For the Shadow Sirens, there's just one thing I can describe them, is just bickering. So throughout half the game, while Vivian is working with the Sirens, they mostly just bicker around about who lost the bomb, and them just blaming on Vivian. However, later on in the game, they became more sinister, though I'll talk about that later. And finally we have Sir Grodus, the supreme leader of the Xnauts, and he's okay. I really wish I can say more about him, but he's really just there as the main villain. He does give me a lot of vibes of Dean Bristow Eggman, so there's something. But overall, I find the cast of characters in this game to be very good, honestly. We're about 8 minutes in, and I haven't talked about the gameplay, so let's get started on that. Now for the gameplay. It's pretty much exactly like the predecessor, where you have 2 gameplay styles, the overworld and the battle system. For the overworld, you're traveling through various environments trying to find the crystal stars and trying to defeat enemies along the way. This game also emphasized the main hub world of the game compared to 64. Rogueport is a lot more vast compared to Toad Town, where there's a lot of exploration in the area compared to Toad Town. It is also the most open area of the entire game, compared to the more linear chapter levels. It gives out a nice contrast to Rogueport compared to the chapters. Especially when you unlock a special ability in the chapter levels so you can use in Rogueport. Now returning from Paper Mario returns the partner abilities, where your partner can do a special ability that can help you along the way. Most of the abilities the partner can do is returning from Paper Mario 64, where Goomba plays like Goombario, Koops plays like Kooper, Admiral Bombray plays like Bombette, and Vivian plays like Lady Bo, but instead of making Mario invisible, she pulls Mario into the shadows. And for the new characters, Yoshi plays like a combination of Parry and Spike. He's also probably the character you're going to be playing the most since he can run a lot faster. And Flurry can use her super strong wind to blow out secrets. These will be the characters you'll be using the most in the game, though Mario has his own kind of abilities as well. Tragically, Mario opens up these black boxes that curses him into becoming these horrible looking paper forms. The first one is the paper airplane form, where if you stay on this special icon, Mario will transform into a paper airplane. For the second one, Mario will turn sideways so he can slip through narrow objects. And for the final one, Mario can transform to a paper boat to go through water, because in Rogueport, there's piranhas everywhere! Especially in this guy's swimming pool. Now for the final ability Mario can do is that he can find these special boots and hammer upgrades, so he can traverse to different areas. These are also very useful for the battle system. In Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, it shares the battle system from 64, but refined it by a lot. So instead of it being a battle arena, it's more of a stage play. You even have a bunch of audience in the background, which are going to be very useful in this battle system. If you're familiar with 64, it's pretty much like this. You have a hammer and jump ability as an attack, you can use items to heal you or use them to attack the enemies, and you can do special moves using flower points. The star abilities return from 64, but instead of using the star spirits, you're using the crystal stars. They also play differently because in 64, the star spirits are active automatically, while in Thousand Year Door, you have to play this little mini-game. The better you play the mini-game, the more useful the crystal star is. But it's very limited, so if you run out of star power, you need to fill back up. And this is where the audience comes in. As I said before, in Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, the battle system is like a stage play. And this is not just an aesthetical theme, because the audience has an important thing to the battle system. So every time you attack an enemy, you'll get star points from the audience cheering. But if you want to refill your star points even faster, you must appeal to the audience. So you can do these special moves where, if you attack, you can attack in style. This will cause the audience to get even more wild, which means you'll get more star points. Another thing that is new is that your partner has a health meter in this game. In the previous game, your partner doesn't have a health meter, but if he gets damaged, he'll get stunned for depending on how badly he's damaged. But in Thousand Year Door, he has a proper health system, so you need to worry about both Mario and your partner. And the final thing I should be talking about is that this may be a theater, but I didn't say it was a properly stable theater. Because throughout the game, there'll be either props or lights constantly falling on either Mario or the enemies. So you better keep on your toes for that part. Now in Paper Mario 64, the presentation was pretty much a 2D character in a 3D world. It barely acknowledged that it was made out of paper, with this one exception right here. That goes by the same thing with Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. It does have a bit more paper visual humor, like this bridge scene for example, but not that much. And with that all the way, all I have to say is just hot damn, this game looks very good for the GameCube. Every single chapter in this game has a distinct feel and theming towards it. That if I blur the video like this, you'll probably tell what it is based on the colors of it. The main hub world of the game is Rogueport, and this is probably one of the most gritty looking Mario areas ever. Like, the centerpiece of the town is a freaking noose. And that's just one of the settings, because in this game there's tons of visual variety in this. In Chapter 1, we have a simple grass plain, but once we get to Chapter 4, we have this area that has this twilight feel to it. They can also do very interesting things with lighting. In Chapter 6, you're spending 3 days in this giant train. And once it goes to evening to night, it has this really relaxing feel to it. The best looking chapter of the game is easily Chapter 2, Boggly Woods. This just has a really nice artistic feel to it. It makes me think, if Nintendo would ever return to a certain art style for Paper Mario, I want them to go all out with different art styles with the settings. I can imagine one of the chapters being like a Yoshi's Island chapter returning from 64, but the whole art style is hand drawn, kind of like the SNES game. I was very curious on what this game would look like in widescreen, so I boot up Dolphin and used the widescreen hack. And besides the weird draw distance because this game wasn't made for widescreen in mind, I'd say this looks pretty promising if they ever re-release this game for widescreen. Though considering this is Nintendo, it's a freaking miracle we can at least play Mario Sunshine on Switch. And then there's the soundtrack, and it's pretty good. This game emphasizes on techno instruments in a way, with a slight hint of ambience like in Boggly Woods once again. It has a nice variety in tones in the music. Like when it's trying to be lighthearted, it has this really happy music, but when it tries to get serious, it has this really unsettling feel to it. But overall, it's a really nice soundtrack for the game. So in Chapter 3, Mario travels to a giant floating island to get the Crystal Star. This is Glitzville, home to the very popular fighting tournament, Glitzpit, and they are using the Crystal Star as the champion belt. And so Mario has no choice but to join the tournament and become champion of the Glitzpit. So in this chapter, Mario must face through several enemies to become champion. And in order to do that, he needs to do a special criteria while attacking the enemies. Every time Mario does these criteria, he's able to rise up in rank. However, there's something that is not right about this place, because eventually Mario will get a message from this mysterious guy named X. So throughout this chapter, you're fighting up enemies and trying to figure out the secrets of the Glitzpit. In one of the big events of this chapter, when you reach outside, you'll see a hot dog person trying to chase an egg. And that is a sentence I never thought I would be saying. Anyway, so once you rescue the egg, it will follow you throughout the chapter. Eventually, during a match, Mario and his partner will be unable to fight the opponent. Meanwhile, the egg was able to hatch while Mario and his partner were getting their asses kicked. And this is where you get your new partner, which is a Yoshi with an attitude. And what's really fascinating is that the Yoshi can change color depending on how long it'll take for it to hatch. You can even name the Yoshi. I was able to name it Jewel based on my cat because she's a little sweetie pie, who constantly tries to teeth on my mic while I'm trying to record. Anyway, so eventually X will give Mario a special key to get into the upper areas of the stadium. This is when Mario tries to spy on the manager and his secretary on what they're doing. Things become really dire once Mario was able to reach to another area of the attic, where he's able to find two people severely damaged. The Koopa seems to be dead, while the bandit only can say one thing, which is, don't be around the arena while everyone's gone. It seems that the higher-ups are onto Mario, as once they're at the Champions round, they lock him up in an abandoned locker room. The only way they were able to get out was swimming through the toilets, which is honestly one of the most Mario things I've ever heard. Anyway, so they're able to reach the Champions round in time to fight Rock Hawk. And this guy is an asshole. He tries to do petty threats towards Mario, and it turns out that he tried to sabotage Mario 3 times. And honestly, when I first saw Mario getting locked up in an abandoned locker room, I thought it was just the higher-ups trying to lock him because he was onto them. But no, it was just this guy just trying to be a jerk. With all that together, it makes it even more satisfying to beat this guy. And with that out of the way, Mario becomes champion of the Glitzpit. However, they're not done, as once they were able to get the Crystal Stars, they realize it's a fake. They then realize there was an open air vent and someone's talking on the other side. So, they climb inside the vent and find out they're at the manager's room. It was then revealed that the manager has this special machine that holds the Crystal Stars. It also reveals he would silence anyone who figures out about his secret. And with his cover blown, he rushes to the arena so he can transform into this thing. Eventually he'll go down because you're facing up with freaking Mario. He then goes down to his normal form and then he surrenders. But then suddenly, his assistant arrives and revealed that she only got the job so he can find out what's going on around the area as well. She then explains that she had a little brother who was the first champion of the Glitzpit, who then one day disappeared without a trace. She then thought it was foul play, so she got the job at the Glitzpit to investigate the area. But when she saw her boss transform into this monster, she lost all hope until Mario arrived. She then sends Mario a cryptic message once he joined the arena. But now that Grubba has been defeated, she then asks what did she do with her little brother. Unfortunately, it was revealed that Grubba killed him because he figured out what was going on with him. But then suddenly the Crystal Star started powering up, and then suddenly her little brother reappears. Once Mario finally reunited this family, he then collects the Crystal Stars, ending this chapter. This is honestly the high point of the entire game, period. I really love this chapter. I love its story, I love its setting, and I just really enjoy it. And what's also great is that once you've completed this game, you can actually come back and redo all the challenges again. Which is honestly really cool, especially once you've beaten the game and you're all powered up. It gives the feeling that you have really become more powerful once you've left the arena. So where you go next is, oh boy. So I've explained a lot of great things about this game, but like every other game, it's really not perfect. Like, don't get me wrong, I really like this game. I played it when I was little, and I still like it to this day. But there is just one big issue that comes there and then in this game. which is the backtracking. Now, first thing is, I really don't mind backtracking that much, as long as I don't think it's annoying. Like in Chapter 1, you're backtracking once you collect all the keys so you can get to the castle. That I don't mind. However, there are two sections of this game where I find the backtracking really annoying. There's also Chapter 5, but that was kind of minor, but there's two I really didn't like. And if you're familiar with this game, I think you'll know what it is. So let's start them off with order with Chapter 4. And I've gotta say, while this chapter has a really interesting setting and story, gameplay-wise, it's probably the weakest in the game. In this chapter, Mario arrives in something called Twilight Town, where the villagers are turning into pigs. And so Mario decides to investigate the castle, where they find this mysterious hooded figure. So after a really simple battle, you'll get to Crystal Star, but Mario looks a bit dazed out. It is then revealed that Mario and this hooded figure named Dupless had swapped bodies. And so, Dupless was able to steal Mario's partners and everything, leaving Mario nothing but a shadow of his former self, literally. Meanwhile, the Shadow Sirens are starting to bicker again about the super bomb that Vivian, quote-unquote, lost. And so, once Mario reaches the town, he then encounters Vivian and finds the bomb for her. Once Mario gives Vivian the super bomb, she then decides to help Mario figure out his curse. And so, Dupless has promised Mario that he will lift the curse if he knows his name. Now this sounds really interesting so far, right? Well, this is the part where it kinda kills the chapter for me. So once you've reached the midpoint, which is where Mario gets cursed, you have to go back and forth several times in this chapter. And what makes this even worse is that Mario is slightly slower compared to his N64 game. In that game, Mario had this special move where he does his small dash that's useful for dodging enemies. But in this game, you'll get speed by riding Yoshi, but since he's not here because Dupless stole him, you're forced to walk back and forth. You also need to worry about the enemies in this chapter because, in this area, the level design is a bit more narrow compared to the other ones, especially in the woods. Eventually, you'll learn Dupless's name, so once you figure it out, he then rushes back to the castle, where Mario finishes him off. Now, while I was a bit negative towards this chapter, I do have to say the ending of this point is a bit warm-hearted. Because once Vivian finds out that she was helping Mario the entire time, she then runs off a bit. But then comes back when she realized that Mario was the only one that was ever nice to her. Because halfway through this game, she was pretty much bullied the entire time. I kinda felt guilty about Chapter 2 where you have to fight off Vivian and her Siren sisters. But yeah, even though that Chapter 4 is not my favorite chapter of the game, I do see why people really love this chapter. But then we get to Chapter 7 where, my god, what the hell is going on here? So in Chapter 7, Mario must go to the moon to get to the final Crystal Star. Unfortunately, you're going to need permission from General White to use the cannon. And so you have to go through nearly every area of the game just to figure out where he is. Thankfully, however, in the sewers there's a fast travel where you'll find these blue pipes where it leads to different areas of the game. Unfortunately, one of the areas is the Glitz Pit, which doesn't have a fast travel. So you have to climb all the way up just to get to the Glitz Pit, and once you realize he's not there, you have to go to the Polished Heights area. And so you have to go all the way back to the sewers and get to the pipe where you ask this guy, and it's revealed that he was inside his home the entire time back at Chapter 7. Okay, I think that's enough pessimism and ranting for today, so cue the next chapter! So in this game, you're not only playing as Mario throughout the game, but Bowser and Peach as well. So once Peach was captured by the X-Nauts, she then finds herself with a weird friendship with the main computer of the area, who is revealed to be very sentient, in a way. So throughout the game, Peach tries to figure out a way to get through the area and figure out what the X-Nauts are trying to do. And so once she figures out the information, she then used tech to send the info to Mario. It's also revealed why the X-Nauts want to go into the Thousand-Year Door, as it holds the home to a demon. Meanwhile, Bowser, chilling at his castle, receives information that Peach has been kidnapped. And since no one is allowed to kidnap Peach other than Bowser, he then rushes off to Rogueport to find her. And this is when things get a bit weird for Bowser, because throughout the game, Bowser will go through levels that's similar to Super Mario Bros. Which, fun fact, this is the closest thing when it comes to playing a 2D platformer of Mario on the GameCube. This also became a template of the later game Super Paper Mario. And after you finish these levels, Bowser will find himself in different areas of the game. And these are probably the funniest parts of the game. In Bowser's Castle, you can talk to one of the minions of the area where he explains that he saw Bowser lingering on a photo of Peach. He then froze in fear when he realized that Bowser was behind it the entire time. And then in the next Bowser section, Bowser finds Peach in a windowsill and then goes all googly eye on Peach. And while he's going googly on that, a Koopa appears in fear, saying that his life treasure is in danger, and he said he would rather die to give up his life-size poster of Peach. He then snatches his poster of Peach out the window and rushes inside, leaving Bowser embarrassed. And he's really just disappointed at himself that he was fooled by a simple poster. But then he decides to travel throughout the area to find the crystal stars, as Mario's trying to do as well. However, he's doing a terrible job at it throughout the game. So as Mario was able to collect the 6th crystal star from the museum, the X-Nauts were able to caught on that their main computer was helping Peach the whole time. But since their plan is almost complete, they then send Peach to the Palace of Shadows. And so, once Mario finally reaches to the moon and the X-Naut space, it was completely empty, leaving them to finally face off with Lord Crumb once and for all. And with that, Mario collects the final crystal star. But then suddenly news came quickly to Bowser that Mario has finally collected them all and heading to the 1,000-year door. Enraged that Mario has beaten him to the punch, he then travels back to Rogueport to beat Mario once and for all. And so, with all the crystal stars in hand, Mario was able to finally open the 1,000-year door. And with this, we're at the final chapter, the Palace of Shadows. And this area is a massive gauntlet, so you're going to use all of your partner's abilities to full use here. There's also several sections of this game that's exactly like the final chapter of the N64 game, which is a little nice touch. You then fight the Shadow Sisters in Duplis again, and then fight the giant dragon! This all leads to the throne room where Sir Grodus has met Mario for the first time. He then reveals that he tricked Mario the entire time to collect all the crystal stars so he can open the doorway. So this entire time when you're trying to use the crystal stars to stop the enemy, you were helping him the entire time. Grodus then tries to fight Mario, which lets him getting his butt kicked. This leads Bowser to literally crash into the party where he fights Mario once and for all. Bowser, unfortunately, was the perfect distraction for Mario as Grodius takes Peach deeper into the palace. So once Mario defeats Bowser, he then chases Grodius down to a resting area where the demon sleeps. She then merges into Peach and becomes physical. With the demon awakened, he then tells the Queen to kill Mario. The Queen disobeys him and then blasts him until he was just ahead. The Shadow Sirens then appear, revealing that Grodius was just a puppet the entire time. They then reveal that the Thousand Year Door this entire time was made up by them. They falsely spread rumors that the Thousand Year Door contains something that makes you rich and powerful, so evil organizations like the X-Nauts were able to go into it. And with the Shadow Queen possessing Peach, she now has a physical form, so she can do unholy things to the world. But Mario is not going to go down that easily, as he faces off with the Shadow Queen. But things start to go into the dire once the Shadow Queen becomes invincible, and then she absorbs the audience members in the background and heals herself back up. But then suddenly, the Crystal Stars became active and then goes to Rogueport, where he forms a circle around the noose. Why is it around the noose of all things? And then the Crystal Stars spread out throughout Rogueport, where the people that Mario helped along the way cheers them on to fight the Shadow Queen. The Shadow Queen's invincibility then shatters as Peach breaks free for a bit. Peach was able to gain conscious a bit, where she's able to heal Mario for one final time. And with that, it's time for the true final battle. And this is honestly the hardest boss in the game, period. The Shadow Queen does a lot of curses throughout the battle. So it's best to try and use Vivian throughout the battle because she can use this very useful attack where she can explode enemies all at once. I had to use most of my partners throughout this battle. It's a really tense one. Like, I was literally 1 HP away from dying. Like, it was really that tense. Like, I was literally 1 point away from dying. And with that, Mario was able to defeat the Shadow Queen and save Peach. Professor Frankly then appears, revealing that he was able to find the treasure chest for the Thousand Year Door. And finally, it's time for Mario and Peach to go home. Mario then sends farewell to all the partners he's met along the way. And that concludes Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. And yep, it still holds up really well. And also, it's a really nice conclusion to an era of Paper Mario. Because afterwards, Paper Mario would change drastically in terms of gameplay and everything. But despite all the changes Paper Mario has gone through, people still find the first 2 games with fond memories. I'm not trying to downplay other games like Super Paper Mario, Color Splash, or The Origami King. But what the first 2 Paper Mario games represented at the time was, it was supposed to be a spiritual successor to the Mario RPG started on the Super Nintendo.
Super Mario RPG.
As I said earlier in the video, the 2000s were the golden age for Mario RPGs. And there's a reason why the Thousand Year Door has been talked to death for all these years. It's a culmination on why people love the Mario RPG games. It had a pretty solid story, it had very memorable characters that people still talked about to this very day. The art style for this game is very timeless, it still looks great to this very day. And this is easily Intelligent System's best RPG yet. This is a game that is still talked about to this very day. And even though Paper Mario hasn't been an RPG for a very long time, its legacy is still impacted by the indie scene. Recently, a group of indie developers have gathered around to create a community where they can share their own creations that were inspired by Paper Mario. I'll leave a link in the description below for the Paper Fanverse Direct. And out of all these indie games, the most popular one by far is Bug Fable. If you're a fan of Paper Mario, I recommend trying these places out. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye! This is probably my longest video ever, and I'm a bit beat. The next video won't be as long as this one, I promise.